This is the Puck Junk Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Puck Junk Hockey Podcast. I'm Sal Berry, and along with me is Tim Parrish and Clemente Lisi. And today we are going to talk about the news that came out of the Tops Summit recently. And we're also going to talk about the Calder Trophy finalists, that being Luke Hughes, Brock Faber, and Connor Bedard, right? So definitely a little bit of a theme to this episode, but we're also going to talk about the stuff that's going on with the Top Summit, because this is going to affect all of the hobby, the trickle down effect. Maybe not hockey right away, but it'll hit hockey. But anyways, guys, how we doing? Clemente, I'll start with you this time. What's the latest and or the greatest?
Nothing. Glad we're all back together.
Tim, how about you?
Well, I'm at the staring blankly into the void stage of my day right now, so I'm either in an existential crisis or I'm just hungry, one or the other.
Staring into the void, would that be my dark eyes, or do you have your screen turned off, or?
No, I'm looking past my microphone, like far past it.
Oh, I see.
Like into the abyss.
Gotcha.
So, but anyway, other than that, I'm great. Fantastic, in fact.
Yes, existential crisis. I think we all feel this at some time when we're like, should I spend that much on a card? What is a card? What is value? What do these things even mean? Why do I collect, right? And then it just kind of goes from there.
I don't think we want to open that can of worms today.
No. That'd be a different podcast. I think there's a Twitter, or maybe it's a podcast. I don't know. It's called Cardboard Therapy, but I think that's like retail therapy. I think that's like buying cards so you feel better about things. Maybe I don't know. Let's talk about this Top Summit, though. I remember reading about this last week, but then we talked about it before we started recording, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is a big deal. So, which one of you'd like to take point on this?
I could set it up, but then I know Tim knows a lot about this too. So
Tim will tear it down.
yeah. I mean, so Tops had
It is a house of cards, after all.
rim shot. Anyway, so Tops had their summit where they invited all their, their vendors and everything else, and all the card shop owners and all that. And a couple news tidbits came out of it. One being that they've extended their redemption program to 10 years. Okay, so which is big. So starting in anything from 2021, I think onward, they said just add 10 to that expiration date, which is pretty amazing. They also admitted that they had 70,000 redemptions that were outstanding, and they're down to 10,000 now. And this is across all sports, not just baseball, all sports. So look, they want to make it for a better customer experience. I get that. It also is really good, I think, because if you want to buy old product, you don't have to worry about redemptions being expired. Now, how that trickles down to hockey, we shall see. Upper Deck, I think their rules are 2 years, just like Topps' old rule. I predict that will force Upper Deck to have to extend it as well. And that would be great, because then I think a lot of people are afraid of buying old wax for the fear of, well, if I get a redemption card, I don't get anything for that.
Yeah, that is always a thought when I see like a box of cards and it's reasonably priced and it's from a few years back, and then I'll say, wait, does this have redemptions? Am I going to be mad if it has a redemption that I can't redeem because it's expired, right? And I know Upper Deck would do like that. Oh, you could bring it to a show, you could throw it in our fishbowl, we'll do a drawing. And I don't quite remember what they would give you, but wouldn't they would give you some random redemption card, I think. Like you would give them the expired redemption card, and oh, that was it. Then you would pick something out of a fishbowl, and that would correspond to like something they'd have in a display case. But
They try to make amends for the fact that you pulled this old redemption, or maybe you forgot you had it or whatever. They also said something that I think I agree with, which is they want to really reduce the number of redemptions. They want players to actually sign when they can, and that would be better across the hobby, because I think a lot of people get redemptions and they don't really like them. Now I know in hockey we get them with MVP. I think that's intentional, though. I think that's all part of the way the sets put together. But
Just for the number one draft pick card, right?
right, right.
We're talking more about like autographs or
Yeah.
something where you'd be excited. I mean, when you get a bicycle for Christmas, you want to get a bicycle for Christmas, not a picture of the bicycle saying, "Yeah, it'll be here Monday."
Yeah, it was the hobby version of IOU, like an I owe you this. But the problem with the redemptions was, and I never really went down this road. People waited in some cases years, particularly with Panini and some other brands, where they wouldn't get their redemption card for literally years. So
Tim, your thoughts on this?
Oh, it's my turn now? Okay, cool. Now, let me preface my point that I'm about to make first by asking a question. Is what I say right now going to jeopardize anybody's allocation of Topps product if I voice my opinion?
No,
no,
Okay.
we don't
I
get
do not.
allocation.
Good. Then
Yeah,
may I speak freely, gentlemen?
You
we
may.
would expect no
Okay.
less.
So, Clemente, you brought up the first point they made on their social media platform, and that was 1 year ago, we had over 70,000 redemptions, and today it's below 10,000. Awesome. Great. Don't you think that's a little misleading, though? Sure, they knocked out 60,000 redemptions, but if you look at what people post about what they're getting back as replacements, they're not equivalent. They're filling people's redemptions with garbage cards and things that aren't correct. I mean, it's really no different than what Panini did when they all of a sudden said, we don't have these cards anymore, so we'll just give you Panini points that will be good to redeem for more cards that we don't have. I don't think this is any different than that. Topps is simply Fanatics, whoever you want to pin this on. I mean, it was a Topps announcement, so let's go with Topps. By coming out and saying, yeah, we did all this work to cut our, I think that's a little far-fetched because it's not telling the whole truth. That's my first thing. Now, second thing, 10 years, 10-year expiration window instead of the 2 years or whatever it was. And the fact that they're backdating it. Now, backdating it to 2022 or 21/22 products, not 21 products. So we just saw a whole bunch of posts on social media over the last couple of days of people buying up auctions on eBay for expired redemptions and paying a ton of money, and they were all from like 20 and 21. Yeah, that's not going to fly because that's outside the window. And the only reason why they did that dual year is because they have soccer product that crosses over. So that being said, okay, 10 years. Why? Why are they doing this and why are they doing it now? Doesn't change any remote bit of how I feel about redemptions. But the fact that they announced originally when this whole takeover took place, the fact that they were going to try to eliminate redemptions or cut them back to a very small amount, and they continue to say they're trying to remove redemptions. Don't you think that this gives them a bigger opportunity to stick more redemptions in? Because now, if you've got 10 years to redeem them, they've got 10 years to fill them. It works both ways, right? I mean, they're not going to put any kind of expiration date on the time that they have to fill them, especially if they're going to give you an extra 7 or 8 years on top of what they were already giving you. Look, I think this was done for one reason. They got feedback from all of their dealers complaining about the giant glut of product that hit their shelves between 2020 and 2021 that sold really quick. So they bought pallets and pallets and pallets of it and now sits on shelves with nobody buying it. So now they have all this dead money that they invested in this product that they already paid for. And yeah, Topps already got their money, but you can't make all your new sellers mad. So what does this do? It takes those products especially from 2022, puts them back in play. Even those crossover 21, 22 product, it puts them back in play. So anybody that's seeking those potential redemption cards now, hey, now I can buy this product without fear that I'm not going to ever get the redemption. So if it's not packed out and I get that scratch off card or whatever, now I don't have to worry that I'm never going to see this card because I'll get it sometime in the next 10 years. So guess what? All that product that's been sitting dead, 20% increase in price, 30% increase in price, because now it's back to being a live product. So if stuff wasn't already redeemed and there's record of it out there, you never know what you're going to hit out of here. Look, yeah, am I being negative? Sure, I'm being negative. But nobody does something this extreme without a reason. And yeah, you're going to change the hobby and you're going to do this and you're going to do that. I get it. And this is one of those things that you set out to do from the beginning, is try to eliminate redemptions. But this ain't it. This ain't it. I mean, what's this going to do to future product too? If you prop up the value of old product, you take the demand away from future product. So what if you have a crappy rookie class? Now nobody pays attention to the new product and they're all going for the old stuff because they know they can still redeem those cards. I'm trying to look at the reason.
Yeah, you're not being negative, you're being more cynical and smart about it. I agree. And maybe the better announcement would have been, they would have created a rule or regulation around when they would fill the redemption. If they said, oh, every redemption we get, we make sure we get it to you within 30 days, that's a different announcement than, yeah, we can go 10 years to the future. But they didn't say that they were going to alleviate any backlog they may have. And this may create a bigger backlog if people are buying this old product, getting more redemptions. And then in some cases, Tops and other companies can't even fulfill the redemption. So you end up getting like, oh, another autograph, not the kind you pulled, but because that's the best they can do. I know Panini is famous for that. Panini is famous for giving you stuff that you didn't want because they couldn't fulfill
Well, and
that autograph.
that's the thing is, what Panini was doing, and they basically just threw up their hands and like, sorry guys, all this stuff is long gone. So we got nothing. So we're just going to give you Panini points. Will Topps get to that point? No. Fanatics isn't going to let them get to that point. So it's never going to get that dire, I don't think. But to your point you just made, 5, 6, 7 years down the road, hey, when I pulled my redemption, it was worth, this was a $7,000 card, and now it's barely worth $50. So what are you going to give me? Are we going to hear people complain about that? Or if for some reason they don't have it, but they're still going to offer a replacement for it, now what? Oh, I had this guy, he was like, the number one pick in the draft, and now he's a bust and is an Uber driver in Atlanta. So it's like, what do you do now? Right? Are you going to get some scrub as a replacement? Even though at the time you pulled it, that was a case breaker right there. So I don't know. What's the rule?
I don't know, but I think as far as like redeeming, or excuse me, getting a replacement for your redemption, like I think of like when Upper Deck would do something, they'd always give me like the same type of card, right? So like one year I bought a box, or maybe was one of my boxes, I can't remember, but it was SP Authentic. And what's the big deal about what's the one thing you look forward to in a box of SP Authentic?
The Future Watch autos.
The Future Watch auto, right. And okay, so this wasn't a redemption now that I think about it. My box was missing the Future Watch auto. So they sent me 2 Future Watch autos from a different product. And I was just like, all right, well, you know what? There's no guarantee that I would have gotten the best Future Watch auto. It was from 2021. So I was hoping, maybe Kirill Kaprizov, that would be an awesome Future Watch auto to get, right? Of course, that's one that everybody would want. But the thing is like, I thought that was okay. But then I know, like,
I was going to say, that's different, though. That's a QC issue. They didn't pack out what they said, so they're fixing it. This is a little different.
Like another time with Upper Deck, I've told the story a million times. I was supposed to get a Patrice Bergeron, I think it was a jersey autograph card. and they couldn't fulfill it. And so then they sent me a Tuukka Rask SP Authentic Future Watch Auto, which was funny because that card the time they gave me that card was already like 6 years old. And I was just like, wow, you're giving me this Future Watch Auto of Tuukka Rask, and it was like $100 card at the time. And I'm like, I'd rather have that than just a random Patrice Bergeron autographed jersey card. You know what I mean? Even though that might have been a nicer card, it wasn't a rookie card, right?
So that's my whole theory, but working in favor of the collector in that case.
Right. And so like I think like I don't want to change the subject to Upper Deck just yet, but like I think they've done a good job. I think Panini's done a bad job because I remember like when I got something it was like a box of Panini Limited and I was supposed to get a redemption and I never got the card and I kind of forgot about it and they kind of forgot about it because they lost the hockey license. So they literally just forgot about everything. Um, and then I had to nag them years later. I'm like, hey guys, it's been like 3 years. What's going on with my redemption? Maybe it was 4 years. I can't remember. I think it was just, and I had to like harass them on social media for like 2 weeks. And then they finally did something about it. They gave me a Blackhawks autograph Brandon Saad rookie card, which was nice. I'm like, well, he's not on the team anymore. But if I got this when he was on the team, yeah, I would have been pretty ecstatic about it. But the thing was that the card that I should have got should have been like numbered out of like 25 or 99 or something. And I think the card that they gave me was like numbered out of 999 and was like an autograph, not like an auto patch or something. So it was a definite downgrade. And I see what you're saying is like, we don't know if they're downgrading the redemptions. Yeah, they're saying, yeah, we got through, 60,000. So they're doing over a rate of 1,000 redemptions a week, but we don't know if they're just giving them itchy and scratchy money, like from The Simpsons or what was, remember that episode? They go to itchy and scratchy land and Homer buys the itchy and scratchy money.
Yeah. And nobody takes it.
It's like real money, but fun. And nobody takes it. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and that's kind of what we're left with. Look, I've been one of the lucky ones. I've never had a problem with an Upper Deck redemption. I've never had a problem with a Topps redemption. And up until 13, 14, I never had a problem with a Panini redemption. And so I've only ever had one redemption issue, and it was with Panini, and it was with something I didn't even buy the box of, but I ended up with the redemption card, and that was for a Dominion Gold Rookie Patch auto of Bo Bennett. Yeah, yes, that Bo Bennett. They never like made good on it. Years later, I happened to log into the Panini Points program because I saw something about them retiring something or whatever, and I went, I wonder if I have any points. Sure enough, they converted that to points. I didn't ask them to. I don't know how they did, but they did. So I had points on my account, and I went and looked to see if I could find the same card. I found a similar one. Cost way more than the points that they gave me, but still. Now that card, I looked that card up a couple weeks ago just because it popped into my head, and I could buy one on eBay for like $12. So there you go.
Right. You know what's funny that they gave you the points, but you didn't even
Yeah, I didn't know it.
And so
I had no clue.
That's what I mean. Yeah, and the customer service experience is not ideal there in that case. And I think in Fanatics' case, I think you're right. They want to move old product. I get it. And that's true. What you said makes total sense. But I also think they want to make a better customer experience. I think redemptions are like one of the worst things in the hobby.
I'm pretty sure we all agree on that.
Yeah, nobody wants to pull a redemption. Like, I luckily have never really pulled one. I've never had to deal with a redemption. But I see people buying redemptions on eBay, and I'm thinking, why would you do that? Like, why would you go chase what I think is a headache? Because ultimately you may be buying something that is not going to be the end result, the end product. You might mail that in or whatever, you never hear back, or you hear back or get something of lesser value or whatever it is. And so, I think in an ideal world, they'd be gone.
Oh,
There'd be no such thing
absolutely.
as a redemption. It would be, I'd rather downgrade a product than make all these promises to people and then they don't, they just get a card that says you're gonna get this and then you don't get it.
I mean, even other manufacturers or former, quote unquote, former manufacturers have gone on record and come out and said how much they hate redemptions and how they're stupid and how the whole program's broken. I'm not afraid to say it. Leaf doesn't use redemptions. least in any current product anymore. If they can't pack it out, they can't pack it out. And, Brian used to go on record all the time saying how much he hated redemptions. In fact, he went on a tirade on X not that long ago about Panini giving him points for something, and he's just like, "Oh, hell no." So he was raising a big stand, of course. I mean, because everything's over the top, but still, I mean, that's the thing. Collectors hate it. Even people in the industry hate it. It's a necessary evil, and we know that because if they want to get the product out on time and they want to get what's promised on the original checklist into collectors' hands somehow, they have to do it.
But I suspect that Upper Deck may imitate this or extend it because
They might have to.
it would be because it would be good to do because they have to compete in some way, even though it's a different product. But in a lot of ways, it would move some of that old product.
Yeah.
Like Sal said, I'd be more prone to buying something that is maybe 5 years old or 10 years old if I know there's a redemption in there, or something that was like 2 years ago or whatever it is. And I don't know, maybe Upper Deck should. I mean, I'm sure they're looking at it.
And we've seen over the past probably 10 years at least, but maybe even in the last 5, we've seen Upper Deck cut way back on redemptions. I mean, how many product do they hit the market and they're like, nothing, no redemptions. Everything's packed out. And, have there been things cut from checklists a couple of times? Yeah. But at the same time, okay, that hassle you're talking about, Clemente, is not there because you don't have to worry about it.
Like Flagship. I don't think Flagship has redemption in
No,
it, right?
Flagship
No, not that
doesn't,
I
but
remember.
No.
Ever.
well, you have the whole
It's the other
issue
product.
with the cup that we've had the last couple of years. Some of the exclusive guys, or not exclusive, but like the big name rookies, what ended up happening? They were stickers. And why? Well, they got the sticker sheets back instead of the cards. So you either take the stickers or what? You wait for a card that may or may not ever get fulfilled. I mean, that was the problem with the Kaprizov autos. He wasn't signing.
Mm-mm.
So what do you do? So somebody stuck a sticker sheet in his face and he's like, here, fulfill your obligation. It's happened. Doesn't always happen. It shouldn't never happen in a high-end product like that. But occasionally it does. So I mean, the whole reason for this conversation was how is this going to affect hockey? And it's going to be that trickle down thing. Upper Deck's going to have to respond somewhat to this, maybe not as extreme and maybe a little more calculated, but I think they're going to have to do something as a response.
They're going to have to keep up with what Fanatics is doing because if the NHLPA sees what other players or from other sports are getting and they're not getting that, and when I say getting that, I mean money. So if they're not getting that, then they're going to want, they're going to want the same financial gain. Go back 30 years and we'll have to do a show about the impact of the 94 lockout and how that impacted cards. And Tim, I know you talked to me about that for a Beckett article. This is before we did the podcast together.
I think I still have that article, a copy of it somewhere.
Yeah, I spelled your name right too.
Yes, you did. Thank you for that.
What was happening then was you had baseball and football and maybe basketball were starting to get premium products, and hockey was still the 99-cent pack of Upper Deck or maybe a $1.99 pack of Stadium Club or like a 69-cent pack of like Topps Premier or whatever. And they're like, well, no, we want like the $5 a pack cards because those are going to make us more money. We want the premium products, right? So there's always that keeping up with the Joneses, as they say, right? You frame it in the context of these worthless products with expired redemptions are now worth something because the redemptions are being honored for up to 10 years and retroactive to 20 or 21. That's great. I mean, that's great. So if I liked Topps baseball and they had 2021 and I thought it was affordable, I wouldn't be like, oh, it would suck if I got like a really cool card and I couldn't do anything with the redemption. Maybe you don't get the same card that you're promised, but at least you get something. And I think that's great because, I mean, what would you do if you found a box of like, say, 2018-19 and you were like, oh, this is affordable. I could maybe get a Cale Makar in here. I think it was 1819, or was he 1920? But like, so say whatever year Cale Makar was, right? And then you go, oh, well, that'd be cool if I got like an RPA of him or something, right? But then you buy it and then it's expired, right? But then the seller knows that the redemption in there is expired, so then that diminishes the resale value of that thing. I mean, we're getting, I mean, I made fun of this, but like DA Card World, they'll sell you a box and they'll put it in a lucite box, basically, so that it stays, so that your mint in packaged cards in a box that's sealed with the shrink wrap. Now for an extra $50, they'll encase it in lucite so that it stays pristine. And you have people doing this, buying this, because they're like,
It's like a top loader. It's like a top loader for a hobby box. Yeah.
right. And so they're basically saying, you know what? I'm going to buy this Upper Deck Series 2 with potentially Connor Bedard cards in it, and I'm going to save it for 10 years because look at how much Pokemon cards from 1999 are selling for, or look at how much whatever, like old wax is selling for, right? So now there's this market of we're going to buy this and we're going to sit on it for 10 years. But, even if you sit on it for 5 years, I mean, at what point does it like, will people not buy it if it has something with the redemption in it, right? Then they're just buying it for the cards that are in there. And usually the redemptions are the best cards that you could possibly get, usually. So I think it's a good move.
Makar was 1920, by the way.
Was that? Yeah. Okay, 1920. Yeah. Sorry. So what was the other big news from the top summit that you guys wanted to talk about?
All right. So the other big news was they told all the store owners that were there and all the hobby shops. I think they elaborated on the rules that they put forward about a year ago, which got a lot of attention. And some of the details of those rules include Fanatics doing spot checks of hobby shops that are getting allotment. And those spot checks then it's based on cleanliness or where their products are in the store. And that triggers an internal report card that Fanatics has on all the shops and all the dealers. And then that will determine future allotment and relationships with tops. Now,
remember we talked about all this like last July when it first came
right,
out.
when they first, yeah, and we talked about how, wow, like Fanatics really wants to control distribution. They want to control the store. Like they were telling stores at the time, you have to keep a log of like, of all the stuff you're selling, and then you have to be open 7 days a week, and then you have to, you have to post on social media, all this stuff that it was like, well, I don't work for you, Fanatics. I have my own business. But anyway, but now this internal report card where they go to stores and they basically judge you, you know, is interesting because I think a lot of stores are not going to be able to keep up. And maybe this is Fanatics. This is my takeaway. This is Fanatics' way of kind of cleansing the palate in a way and saying, okay, we're going to, like basically like Seinfeld, like no cards for you, no soup for you. Like you're not going to get cards anymore because we think your store is dirty and dingy and you put all the top products on the lower shelf and we don't like that. Like they could say that and they give you an F and then you're off the list. And, or you're not posting social media, you're not doing breaks, you're not doing all this stuff. And I think a lot of those mom and pop shops that have been getting tops cards for years are going to end up on the out. That's my takeaway from this kind of draconian rule or this micromanaging of people's own businesses.
Yeah, you call it a cleanse, I call it a purge, because that's kind of what it is. They're just like, look, if you're not going to keep up with our new age way of selling, then you're out, and you're going to have to find your own way, and it isn't going to include us or our product, at least going forward.
May I tell a story?
It's your show.
Yeah, it's our show. This is a democracy, not a dictatorship. When I worked my old job at the toy company, I've brought that up in the past, right? So originally we were Learning Curve Toys, and we were like the nice, touchy-feely, gentle toy company. We make Thomas the Tank Engine, and we make Bob the Builder, and we make baby developmental toys and stuff like that, right?
The Thomas the Tank Engine toys that single moms would come down the hill for and like strangle each other when a new one would come out. Yeah, those ones.
Really?
Yes.
Oh yeah,
I don't remember that.
they're very popular.
They may have not done it at your toy store, but they did it at mine. So,
Oh, really?
yeah,
Okay, good. And this is back when were you working in a toy store?
early 2000s after I stopped
Yep,
teaching.
that would have been learning
Yeah.
curve. So we had these rules. We had these retailer rules, who we would sell to and who we wouldn't sell to. And we said that we like one of the owners said, we don't sell at Martland. We don't sell at Walmart. We don't sell at Kmart. We avoid any sort of Martland. Then we had these rules that said if you want to carry our toys, your toy store must have carpeting. Your toy store must have shelves that are no taller than 4 feet tall, right? Like they didn't want the floor to ceiling shelves. They wanted the short shelves, right? So you had to have carpeting. You had to have short shelves that were no taller than eye level. You had to have an area to have like a play table set up. Or you could have the Thomas trains out, right? Like you had to adhere to all these rules before you could sell our merchandise, right? I remember Toys R Us really wanted to carry our products. And so Toys R Us built a little sub store inside of their store called Imaginarium that had carpeting and had low shelves. And that's where they put the learning curve toys and the other developmental toys, right? Because they were trying to we were like, no, Toys R Us, we won't sell to you, even though you're a big company. So then they built this little Imaginarium subsection, but then eventually, like when we got bought out by a bigger toy company who just worried about bottom line and nothing else, they're like, yeah, we'll sell to whomever. As long as the check clears. Target wants our stuff, cool. Walmart wants our stuff, cool. Like anybody, right? But I think about that, and I think about how like you try to set these standards, but at the end of the day, it's got to be a volume product. Trading cards have to be a volume product. They can't be this boutiquey thing that you can only get at certain places. Maybe not in gas stations like they were in the 90s or 7-Eleven, but you got to sell them as in many places as you can. That's where the power comes from, not from like limiting their reach. And it sounds like they're trying to limit their reach a little bit, and I think that's a bad idea.
No, you said the keyword Sal. No, you said the keyword Sal. You said boutique, which is exactly what some of these new card shops look and feel like. You walk in there and there's carpeting and there's like lots of space. It's like walking into like a big man cave. There's like very little product that's like sprinkled around. And I've walked in these places and I'm like, look, I want to go in a place where it's got stacks and stacks of wax, where they have dollar boxes, where they have, showcase. Like some of the better shops are the ones that have been around 30, 40, 50 years. So the best shops I find are the ones that opened during the junk wax era and they survived, which is amazing. And those are the best shops, but those are the ones that just from the top of my head, the ones I can think about that I visited in the last few years, those are the ones that have probably been getting top products for 30 years. And they're the first ones who are not going to make the cut because they're not that clean. They're not that, they're not breaking. They're not like on social media. They're, they're open at weird times. Like, and I get, that Fanatics wants to 10x the hobby and everyone was afraid, oh no, that just means they're going to print more product and they're going to sell it in every store. Well, it turns out they're not going to sell it in every store because they have these rules. And now we've gotten more detailed rules. And it's not going to be at the gas station. The gas station will never sell anything that Tops is putting out because it's not going to happen. It's not going to make the cut. And look, Fanatics also has, not only do they have an online store, which is huge, but they have lids. I think they don't want to give their products to anybody. They really don't. They want to control, like you said, like the toy store you had. They want to control it all. And if the mom and pop shops go away, they don't care. They're not there to subsidize those people, even though they've been to me probably some of the most loyal people to Tops in history. And so it's kind of ironic that now you have this double-edged thing. And talking about these new stores, I'm always worried when I walk into a new store and they don't even have hobby products. They have all the retail stuff in the store. Like, you don't carry hobby because they're not getting the allotment. They're not on the list. yet. They're hoping to be on the list, and maybe they will be on the list in the future because these new shops that offer an experience and all these other activities and everything else, they're doing what Fanatics wants more. They're kissing Fanatics' butt, let's be honest. I'm going to say that before Tim says it. And the other mom and pop shops are not going to do that because they carry Panini and they carry Upper Deck and they carry other stuff. I think ultimately the shop owners, I mean, I'd hope they would rebel, but they're probably not. They're probably going to do whatever they're told because that's the only way they're going to be able to survive. And so I think unfortunate.
Yep, everything you said there at the end. That's 100%. No one's going to rebel because who are you going to rebel against? When you have Michael Rubin, when he was confronted about this whole entire thing about Fanatics trying to take over all of the whole sports card world, what's the first thing he said? We want to control the whole entire thing, end to end. And that's what they're doing. So they cut out distributors, and you have to be part of the Topps Direct program. Well, how do you become part of Topps Direct? Well, you shill to us. You are our slave, for lack of a better word. You have to do everything we say, and if you're good enough, we'll give you product. So you have to sling our product, you have to display it like we say, you have to have your store looking like we say it needs to look, you have to be open the hours we say that your hours are open. I mean, yeah, they have lids. This is their way of owning card shops across the country. So every card shop you go to, you know, Bob's Diamond Sports Cards, a Fanatics experience. Billy's Sports Card Emporium, a Fanatics experience. That's what they're all going to be, because it's going to be the cookie cutter. This is how it has to be in order for you to maintain product. I mean, what was one of the things they said last year about, like, you can have our product, but you can't resell it to another dealer or another reseller. And if you take our product to sell at shows, if you do shows, you can't. You have to leave most of your allotment back at the store so people coming in your store can buy it, not the people you're trying to sell it to at this show that you're at. It's just they're piling on and they're piling on and they're piling on. It's like, do this, do this, do this, do this.
And not just that, Tim. Then all those sales had to be recorded
Yeah, that's
in a special
right.
way.
That's the other thing. Everything had to provide clarity to Topps to show that you're following what rules that they said. And one of those was they have to. Now, again, I get it. The whole idea is to stop people from cross selling, horizontally across the business landscape. And I get that. But at the same time, you're going to put people in a position where they may not be able to make the money back off this stuff, because maybe you have a shop that they do tons of breaks, but the breaks are online. So now they can't have allocation for the online because they have to have it in the store, and they don't get enough in order to break enough. Or, you got these guys that are open, maybe open small hours on the weekend, or maybe all their hours on the weekend, but they're very little during the week. So that means now what? They have to be open 24 hours on Saturday and Sunday to make up for the hours they're not open during the week. I mean, my favorite shop, and I've talked about them a million times, I've gone to them for years. That is that shop that you walk into and there's display cases everywhere and there's stuff everywhere and memorabilia everywhere and boxes everywhere. And it's just everywhere. But the owner knows where everything is. And if you ask him for anything, he'll find it for you. And there's guys in there, curmudgeon guys and younger people alike, all in there talking sports and having a good old time, just sitting there and just being immersed in the hobby. Do you think for 1 second that that's the kind of environment that you're going to turn around one day and be like, okay, from 3 to 5 o'clock on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we're going to have a breaking clinic. We're going to show you how to break boxes on camera, or from 11 to 12 on this day, we're going to do this. And no, they're not going to do that. And they're not even going to bow to that. I already talked to the owner of the shop that I go to, and he even flat out said, I asked him, I said, where's your Fanatics section that's like to code where everything needs to be? I'm like, what are you going to do about new product? He's like, I'm going to be put in a position where I'm not going to be able to carry it. If my distributor doesn't have it, I'm not going to have access to it. So it just is what it is. I'm like, so then what do you do? He's like, go backward. And I mean, he's right. How much product is out there? Backward. Tons and tons and tons. So maybe this is good. Maybe they'll go backwards with some of these redemptions and it'll help bring all that product back. I don't know. I mean, I know it's set up to go forward, but at the same time, okay, we're going to put these, like you said, mom and pop places, or these places that don't even have a real POS system and they write everything down on a spacer card out of packs of cards. And like they have like 37 of them hanging up on the wall behind there because it's everybody's tab that's a regular that comes in there all the time, and what you owe them and they owe you, and you square up at the end of the month, because that happens. You couldn't do that in this case because you have to record everything and they have to see it on a sheet and they have to know what you're selling and when you're selling it and how much you're selling it. Old school owners, they're either not going to want to do it and get into this position, or they're going to try it, realize how much of a pain it is, and bow out. And I think that's what Fanatics is betting on.
But I think Fanatics might also realize, because this hasn't really been done before on such a widespread level, that it might be too much work for them.
Oh, I don't think so.
It might be. Well, I mean, you're talking about like they're going to send
Yeah.
spies into the hobby.
They have a hobby shop director. I forget what his name is, Scott something. But he's their hobby shop director. And his job is essentially to set up this entire program where they create liaisons between the hobby shops and Fanatics directly. So essentially that's what they are, spies. Are they going to go to all, what do they say? There's like 1,000 card shops in the United States? Probably not. But 2/3 of them, I mean, at least half of them are probably signed up to be Topps Direct clients. So could they hire a staff of 20 or 30 people to quickly do audits around the country on 500, 600 stores? Absolutely. It would take nothing for them to do that. And all they had to do is walk in with a checklist. Is this here? Yes. Is this here? Yes. Is this here? No. Their bathroom smells like urinal pucks. Nope. There was an old guy that smelled like cigarettes up front. Nope. And it's going to turn into that. And what do you get? I got a D-. So, I was supposed to get 7 cases of flagship, and now I got 3 boxes. Cool. Now you just lost a ton of customers to somebody else.
Yeah, my first job was at a comic book store, and we also sold cards. So we'd get new cards, we'd get new comics. Obviously, comics was probably more of what our specialty was, but cards became so popular in the late 80s and early 90s, of course, the owner got into that as well. And I remember we were outside of the shopping mall across the major street, but then in the mall there was also a comic book store. So they were like our closest competitor. And what was funny is we were the comic book store. You'd walk in, the carpeting was dirty, even though I vacuumed all the time. There would be boxes of comics everywhere, and the price tags were like a handwritten sticker stuck on, the bag, and some of those books you could tell had been priced in like the early 80s, because the comic book bags had yellowed, because they had been there for so long, because the guy had been in business since like the late 70s, right? And this is like the early 90s. Then you go across the street to the other comic book store. Everything is in a brand new bag and board. And they'd have like this 4x6 index card that was printed that had like the name of the comic book store. And it would say, this comic book is mint, near mint, very good, fine. And it would have like a check mark, right? And then they would drop that in, and it would cover a good portion of the top of the cover, the part that people want to see when they're buying a comic book. They always care about, the cover is like the number one thing, right? But of course, they didn't have anything newer than whatever year, if it was 1992, they didn't have anything newer than like, say, 1990. And we talk about like the fanboys, right? Fanboys are in all fandoms, right? Or the hobby bros or whatever. And back then it was like X-Men and X-Force, right? Everybody wanted the new, you got the new Wolverine, you got the new X-Force, right? Like, and so that's kind of the crowd they were catering to, or like the Image Comics crowd, right? Whereas you could go there and be like, hey, do you have this Spider-Man issue from 1981? And they'd be like, no, because they didn't have anything older than 1990. You'd go to our shop and we'd have stuff from like the 30s and the 40s. And so it was definitely like, like we would not have been a Fanatics experience back then. Although I'm talking about comic books, but the comparison still
But
helps.
what you're saying, Sal, is true of new shops that are opening up, and a lot of them are opening up now because there's been a boom. Those new shops look very different from the old. It's not new, but what's going to be different here is that Fanatics is doubling down, obviously, because they not only repeated this rule, but they detailed some extra stuff. And also, I have to assume they're going to want shops to prioritize all the tops products and downgrade Upper Deck, Panini, Leaf, whatever. They're going to say, well, this, it's like when you go into the supermarket, all the stuff that's eye level, all those cereal companies paid to be on those shelves. They don't pay to be on the bottom shelf. People might not know this, but it blew my mind when I found out when I was in college that they place products, and now stores that sell hobby products don't do that, and now they're going to do that. So will this force Upper Deck to say, well, you're an Upper Deck retailer. You're a direct dealer. You get the cards for National Hockey Card Day, all that stuff. We want you to put our stuff up there too. Like we don't want to be downgraded. And what if you're a shop in Canada where most people are interested in hockey? So what, you walk in there, it's going to be all baseball because Fanatics told them to, and they're going to be like, "Well, we don't sell a lot of baseball, so what are we going to do?" And so these rules don't make sense for everybody, depending on what region in the part of the country you're in or whatever. I just think a lot of people are going to basically go away. They're not going to, like Tim said, they're not going to get top product anymore, and they're going to give it to these new people in the hobby that are more their speed, the more the Fanatics type crowd. And for people like us who straddle multiple generations, we like the old school place because, like you said, there's older stuff there. Definitely, there are places today, hobby shops, where you walk in there and there is no quarter box, dollar box. Nothing is cheaper than a few $100s per card. It's like walking into what I call like a card museum. You walk in there, they have like 30 things out in the glass. They have like a couple of wax on the shelves, like all new. The oldest thing they may have is 2023, 2022. And then you walk around and you're like, okay, I'm not buying anything here. Like, I'm not interested in buying, a Bedard rookie in the showcase. And I'm not buying, I already have Series 1. You walk out of there disappointed. There's nothing to look at. There's no conversation. Like what Tim was describing, all those people talking and smell like cigarettes and all that. That's not part of the Fanatics
No, it's
experience.
absolutely not.
There will be no nicotine and there will be no smelly people as part of the experience. And that's kind of the character of the hobby. And I feel like it becomes very corporate. And I don't know that that's what anybody really wants other than
Well,
Fanatics.
it's what the new collecting generation, this is how they were brought into the hobby in the last few years, is influencer type videos. Every video has the tag on it with somebody looks like they're surprised or just got something stuck up their butt. Every picture is that. Everything's clickbaity. And Fanatics calls it some kind of energy driven experience that collectors want to have. I don't think collectors want to have that. It's the people that are coming in that want to drop a couple $1,000s on a pop on a bunch of graded cards that they're gambling on, prospects that we all know how great that always turns out. But it's like, I want to go into this shop and spend $3,500 on a bunch of unproven quarterbacks and football cards, or I want to buy a bunch of these hockey draft picks that haven't even cracked an NHL lineup yet because I'm going to make money in the long run. Like that's what they're catering to. Or people busting boxes and wanting to like look for the hits and film it and put it on camera and set up their little booths in the corner. And it's like, okay, but how many of these people are going to be around 5 years from now? And if those types of collectors go away and you're back with the tried and true collectors of old, which I guess we're all going to die at some point. But my point is, if that's what's left and all of the glitz, glamour, and P.T. Barnum stuff goes away, what's going to happen to your shop? Fanatics wants money. They want you to make money. Because if you make money, you're going to give them the money to buy more product. But if you're not making money, You can't afford to buy the allocations that you're given. And then what do? They cut you off. They reduce your allocation. They come less and less frequently to give you your A- or B+ because you posted less and less on social media about them. I don't know. I guess that's down the road and we see what happens. But look, we've had this conversation before. Are brick and mortar shops even necessary anymore? Necessary? No. But are they important? I think so. And I think they'll continue to be important. And there's going to be different types of shops for every collector. I just hope the ones for this collector don't get pushed by the way of the dinosaur.
There was a shop I went to last winter when I visited our friend Jim Howard in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I said, "Oh, I'm here. Let's hit a few card shops, right? Because it's always fun to go see a card store in another city." And so we went to one shop, and you walk in, and they had these display cases that were like waist high. They were kind of deep, but they weren't very tall. It was just like one shelf, right? So it was almost like when you go to a card show and people have like tables with like the cases on them. So it's just like one layer. But these were like freestanding cases. And then there were like a few display cases behind me that were like maybe 6 feet tall with like glass shelves with like stuff in it. And then there was like one wall that had like neon signs on it. I forgot what they said. I think it was like the name of the store. And I remember Jim said to me, he said, "Wow, the neon sign is in the store, not outside of the store to tell the passerbys the name of the store, but to reinforce while you're inside that you're in the store." Well, I think that's probably because when they also do videos, because it was under a black leather couch. And then off to one side, there was a TV that was showing breaking videos. Maybe there was a mini fridge. I don't remember. If there was, you would believe me.
Were the breaking videos their own?
I don't know, because I'm not sure.
Because that would be weird.
All I know is that everything was like super expensive. Like I was like, well, maybe I'll get a Svechnikov rookie card because this would be the place to get it, right? In Carolina, where they'd have one, right? Like, well, they had them, but everything was like double whatever you think you should pay for it because you were in Raleigh. So of course that's going to be more expensive. And I'm like, well, okay, maybe some other card, right? Everything was super expensive. Like they weren't really worried about comps, and all they had were like high priced cards. Nothing like mid range. Like there was like no $5 card, $10 card. Like everything in there was expensive. Clemente, you said you don't go into a card shop and not buy something, right? I didn't even feel guilty. I just wanted to have something because we went there because I made Jim go through the trouble of, oh, let's go to this card shop, right? And I mean, he wanted to go too, but we both agreed there was like nothing there that we could afford other than overpriced blaster boxes. They had blasters for 30 instead of 20. Oh, and there was one box that was out, a 2-column shoe box. So I start looking at it. And then the guy's like, "Oh, that's free cards for kids." Okay. So the only stuff that wasn't under glass was the free cards for kids, and everything else was under glass. There were TVs showing videos. There was a black leather couch. There was a neon sign. I mean, it was just too much, man. And the thing is like, that's not the place you go to complete your 85-86 top set when you have the Lemieux rookie, but you need to work backwards and get all the other cards that you need or the last 10 that you need. But then where do you go for that? eBay? Okay, so now you're stuck going to eBay for that sort of thing. I mean, the card shop that I go to, and I'll give these guys a shout out because I love them, AU Sports. They're the kind of store you could spend an hour in. And if you say, hey, you know what? I need to finish my 91-92 Top Stadium Club hockey set, they have all their cards behind them. They have just shelves and shelves of cards, and they have these long boxes that are like drawers, and they'll pull one out and put it on the counter and say, have at it. Just, I have to take the ones that you buy off our Beckett store, right? And that's the kind of place where you could go and fill like 18 different sets from like all the sports. And that's how it should be, not just like we only have expensive cards from shit from the past 5 years, but that's where we're headed. But no, I still think it'll work out. I'm being optimistic here because there's always going to be the demand for the old stuff. And if there's always a demand for the old stuff, someone's going to have to sell it. Hopefully it just won't be relegated to shows on eBay, but we'll still have the
You
shops.
guys remember this was a while back, but I showed you the before and after pictures of baseball card exchange over by me.
Yeah.
And like it
Yes.
was, they never had a shop for many, many years. And then when they finally did, it was all right. It was decent. It was what you would expect it to be, but it was decent. And then it became this giant cavernous room of just glass cases and shelves on the side. And so it's like not quite the level of like good old Jeff and his Cards HQ down in Atlanta. Like not quite 50 billion square feet of space, but still it's a huge, huge place. So I like the small and intimate, I guess.
Yeah, no, I think Sal's right. I think I'm gonna come up with my own checklist, which is like the opposite of Fanatics, which is like neon sign, check, leather couch, check. Like if it's got those things, then I'm not really interested. I'm not interested in going into like what looks like, and people have told me this, they want it to look like a man cave. Like so people can hang out here and talk about their $5,000
What if it's
cards.
not a leather couch, but it's fabric and it smells like weed?
Yeah, but you know what? You wouldn't see any couch in a place like that. You'd see like a folding chair that you can sit on to go
Yeah,
through their dollar box or
right.
whatever.
It's
And
folding
look,
chairs.
I think that look, what I want is this. I want there to be room for both. And clearly these rules that they are now, like I said, repeating and giving more detail is basically putting all the stores on notice that we're going to pursue this. Now, I agree with you what you guys said. This may be backlash, and then Fanatics has to pull back and say, you know what, this isn't quite working because those people are gone. They left the hobby. All the people that have been in the hobby for 30 years are still here, and they're not happy, and they'll notice in their sales. The other thing too is they may not notice because people just buy online. They buy product online. They go on eBay, they go on David Adams, they go on Steel City, they go wherever, and they're buying stuff on. They're buying wax online, and they don't even go to a store. And I know people tell me I don't live anywhere near a shop, and I can't get anything retail anyway, so they're just like I just buy online. But I do like to go to a shop because there's always somebody in there, and you can trade stories and talk about cards and products, and you learn things that you didn't know before, and those things need to happen still. And I feel like because the hobby is very, in a very digital world we live in, the hobby is still something that we can touch, that we collect cardboard, and part of that experience has to be going to places to actually see it and talk about it and smell it and buy it. And if it's all eBay, then it's not the same. And card shows are great, but card shows don't happen every weekend. They happen whenever they happen. That's why Fanatics has to, I think, listen to both sides because otherwise, I think it'll just get weird. That's all.
Fortunately, this doesn't really going to affect hockey for right now, but it might. I mean, I don't say it might. I mean, it might if Fanatics gets the NHL license. And the more I think about this, the more I'm really happy with the way Upper Deck is doing things. Oh, sure, I like to complain, and you know what? I'll if something sucks, I'm going to be the first person to say it. But if something is good, I want to be the first person to say it too. And I think Upper Deck does, for the most part, a really good job with its hockey product. Like you look at some of the stuff that like Tops and Fanatics is doing, and Upper Deck isn't doing that yet. And even like a couple of years back, when I was writing articles about National Hockey Card Day, and I was talking to the card shops about it, and they said, "We love this promotion." And then they said, "This is how Tops does their free baseball card day stuff. This is how Panini does their Panini Player of the Day or the Panini Black Friday or the Panini Father's Day stuff. And this is how Upper Deck does their hockey card day stuff." And they said by far this is the best. And then they talked about how like Panini would make them buy product that they already had on their shelves in order to get these Black Friday packs or whatever, right? And how Tops would do certain things, right? And then how Upper Deck would do things differently and how they appreciated that. So I think from like a retail standpoint, like just dealing with the retailers, I've always heard good stuff. Like, is there some stuff that's maybe not so good? Sure. Are there dealers who complain about it? Yeah. Not everything is all sunshine and roses. But I think for the most part, it's good the way it is. I want Upper Deck to extend that license. I know we talk about, yes, competition would be good, but we know now that we're probably never going to see two companies making cards from one sport again, licensed cards. Like we're never going to have like Tops and Upper Deck making baseball cards at the same time. I just really don't think that's going to happen. It is what it is, you know. I mean, the industry's always changed. I'm sure there was somebody who was really upset that they weren't getting baseball cards with their tobacco products. Someone from like 1920 was like, now they come with chewing gum. This is terrible, right? You know, and now we're like, oh, gum. Who the hell wants gum with their cards, right?
Well, and to be fair, just so this doesn't sound like we're bashing Tops and Fanatics and everything else, Upper Deck is notorious for having their diamond dealer rules be pretty stringent upon what you can and can't do with their product when you buy it from them. And it's very similar to some of the things that Fanatics put in place for their product. It stopped short of actually dictating where you can put the product and how it has to be displayed and this, that, and the other. I know Upper Deck has always been, at least for their diamond dealer program, they've always said, you have to buy new product, you have to display the new product, you have to sell the new product. You can't like sell it online unless we approve you for it if you're a shop. Those kind of things are the same or similar, but I don't remember ever seeing, because these get posted online by dealers all the time. I don't remember ever seeing the diamond dealer go that far as to saying some of the stuff that Fanatics is dictating at this point. So Upper Deck's not perfect, but those of us in the hockey world, it's almost all we got, with few exceptions, at least for now.
Right. And I've talked with dealers who aren't diamond dealers and they go through a distributor, and so they're kind of like beyond. They don't have to deal with those restrictions.
I don't want to say you're immune to it, but you kind of get a little more leeway when you go through a middleman.
Right, right. Let's talk a little bit about Connor Bedard. Tim, you gave some fascinating statistics about how many of his young guns have now been graded. So I'm going to read off these numbers, although I'll give you credit for doing the research. I'm just the mouthpiece here. 4,887 Bedard Young Guns have been graded at PSA 10. Excuse me, have been graded by PSA. Yes. So 4,887 have been graded by PSA.
Not all 10s, just most
480. No, yeah. 480 of them by Beckett. So 10%. Beckett is 10% of PSA. Yeah. 239 SGC. So SGC is half of Beckett, and Beckett is 10% of PSA. And then 15 have been graded by CGS. So, wow, that's a lot of, we're already looking at like over 5,000 have been graded.
5,621 exactly.
Wow.
At least as of this recording.
Crazy.
Now, keep in mind that's the order of those: PSA, Beckett, SGC, CGS. That's not the order of their rankings when it comes to graded cards by any means. PSA is tops. Beckett's the bottom. You see, if you look at any of the, what do you call them, the gem reports that come out that show all the cards that were graded every month, Beckett's at the bottom every time. But in this case, more people are sending to Beckett for this card. Only 10%. But.
Well, Beckett also has a big presence in Canada, I think now. They do a lot of grading at the expo and everything else, so maybe that's
and I think that's part of it. Is a lot of the people, when the product hit, was just before some of the bigger shows. So I think you had a lot of that. It'll still be interesting to see how this looks after the end of the summer, because I think you'll see some of this get caught up. And I don't know, I could be wrong, but I think less people are probably sending these in than they were before. Because when some of these started hitting, all you saw on like closed eBay was graded. And now a lot of the raw stuff has shifted back into a lot of those completed sales and things like that. So, but yeah, it's interesting. 5,600 of these already are in slabs.
Hold on. Let me ask you something. You pull a Bedard from a pack. What's your incentive now to get it graded?
In general, or are you talking me?
Not you in general, Tim. We know you hate graded cards with a passion, and that's fine. But
Mine's going in a top loader in a box for the rest of the set. That's where mine's going.
right. But what I'm saying is like, if you're the first person to pull the Bedard card, you send it, you get it graded, you get it back a 9 or a 10, you sell it for as much as you can. If you're the 500th person or 5,000th person to get a graded Bedard, or even to the 5,000th person to get a PSA 10 graded Bedard, and I know that not all of them have been 10s, but my point is that what is the point? My point is, what's the point, right? Like, you want to be first or second or third, or the card has to be rare, right? You find an old Mickey Mantle card that's been kept pristine in a Bible for 70 years, right? You get that graded, right? Because they used it as a bookmark, right, or something. But what I'm saying is, you get a card and you go, I could sell this for $300 to $400 raw, because that's what the ungraded Bedard is selling for. But then I looked and I saw that some PSA 9s and BGS 9s were selling for around $400 as well. In fact, some raw cards had higher final value prices than some graded cards. And by some graded cards, I mean like the 9s. I don't think I've seen anything lower than a 9, but you get my point, right? So do I want to sell a card for $300 to $400 as is, or do I want to get it graded, pay whatever they're going to charge me, because they're like, oh, it's $1,000 card? Well, no, not really. Now it's like a $500 card or whatever, right? It's almost like you'd spend so much money getting it graded, and you wouldn't really make that much more of a noticeable profit.
As Ricky Bobby said, if you ain't first, you're last.
Exactly.
So unless you got in on the ground level and hammered those out, like you said, not all of those are graded a 10. Just look at that PSA number, that 4887, right? Of 4887, it's a pretty significant number. But of 4887, you're looking at just 10s, right? Just a 10 is well over 2,000. Well over 2,000. In fact, that number is, and I just had it in front of me. 2,197 10s out of PSA.
It's a little less than half.
2,259s. So between out of that 4,800, 4,400 of them are 9s or 10s. So what does that tell you? That tells you that the vast majority of them are in that grade level. So unless you're getting a 9 or a 10, you're pretty much stuck. You might as well leave it raw. So if there's anything at all on that card that makes you think that it won't end up a 9 or a 10, I wouldn't even bother at this point. If I was grading, that would be my philosophy. Now, sure, if you're a graded card person, you want everything in a slab, because that's going to be money value. It's going to be value added at the end somehow, some way. But I mean, really, if you're trying to flip it to make a buck now, you just said there's basically no difference between a decent looking raw and a 9 with most of these sales. So if you can buy them secondary market, why would you bother sending yours in? Go buy another one that's already graded. Sell yours. You break even. And you won't have to spend the grading money.
Exactly.
I think I just solved the problem right there.
Yeah.
Occasionally I have a good idea. What do you think, Clemente? You're awfully quiet over there.
No, I mean, look, it doesn't surprise me there's so many 10s and 9s. I mean, given the quality control and the fact that all these cards are basically brand new, like when you open them out of the pack and you mail it in, I mean, unless there's a dinged corner or something happened to the card, I'm not surprised that they're all high grades, for the most part. So that doesn't surprise me.
Would you believe that there were 3 ungradable ones?
See, I find that to be crazy. Like, what? I don't know what what that would. I mean, ungradable meaning they were in really bad shape, or
I
were
don't
they
know. There was even
not authentic? I
there
mean,
was
like
one that there was even one from PSA. Like somebody sent a Bedard in to be graded, and it was a 1.
that must have been somebody left it in their pants pocket and then washed the pants or something. I don't know what happened there.
Yeah, that's a wallet card at that point.
Yeah, that. Right. Well, yeah, exactly. Look, I don't grade my cards. If I buy graded cards, I buy them graded, but I don't actually grade. And so I find the whole grading thing to be kind of a whatever. I think we're talking about it because we use it as a barometer of how popular Bedard is, and like Sal said, there was a rush initially to get it graded because you want to flip it. Now that's kind of over. I mean, now if you're getting it graded, it's because you want to maybe keep it and you want to keep it in good shape. You want to have it graded. You want to have a 10, whatever, because the prices are going down, or they're staying steady. So it's not worth getting it graded for the idea of flipping it. But should he win the Calder or something happens and there's a bump, maybe then this will get a new glut of cards are coming in. And also, there's a lot of people getting it graded because there's so many people are opening this product and ripping it and getting their hands on it. I still think this card will probably end up being the most graded hockey card ever at some point.
It's heading down that path.
I don't know what that is now. Is it the McDavid Young Gun or whatever it is, Crosby, whatever? It's going to surpass those cards easily. And if you look at the
There's more
McDavid, if you look at
McDavids. There's
McDavid,
more McDavids.
right? So there's more McDavid's, and if you look at the McDavid number of graded cards, it's ridiculous how many cards. This is not a rare card at all, and this card is not rare either. It's just that a lot of people want it, and that's it. But it's good to keep tabs on these numbers because now the product has been out about 2 months. And these are pretty high numbers for 2 months, I gotta say. And be curious to see at the 6 month mark where these numbers are.
That's why I said when summer's over, I mean, it'll be interesting to look at that and see where things are at. Especially when
Yeah,
the season ends and there's not a whole lot of focus necessarily on hockey per se. I mean, the
right,
season's never really over from the collector standpoint, but you know, those that are looking, yeah, there's no games. It's not in your face. It's not front and center, so
right,
it's not high on a priority
right.
list. But yeah, that'll be interesting to kind of look at going forward. While you were talking, just to give you an idea, with PSA, the McDavid Young Gun with PSA is almost 6,000. Actually, it's a little over 6,000. So Bedard will probably overtake McDavid.
I mean, yeah, given how close his numbers already are, and McDavid's rookie card is is been around a while.
I think the last time we calculated how many McDavids there were, it was something like between the major companies, it was like 12 or 14,000 were graded.
I think that's
Yeah.
right.
So
Yeah,
Sounds about right.
yeah.
yeah.
So let's talk about the Calder Trophy finalists because, the surprise of no one, Connor Bedard, the center for the Chicago Blackhawks, is one of the Calder Trophy finalists. The other two finalists are defenseman Brock Faber of the Minnesota Wild, also not a surprise, and Luke Hughes, defenseman for the New Jersey Devils. So you got three great rookies from this year. I know I've been like sparring with people online who are like, it should be Brock Faber. And then they give all these reasons why. And I just love it. Like they have to do all this long division, as I call it. I get it. You know what? I don't even know his name, but there's like this one Minnesota Wild blogger, and we've kind of like traded barbs back and forth over the years, probably going back to like 2018 or so. And so he's like writing this think piece about like why it should be Brock Faber. And I'm like, come on, dude. We know it's going to be Bedard for a number of reasons. But I mean, who do you think Bedard is going to win it, or do you think it's going to be Faber or
It's
Hughes?
going to be Bedard. There's no question about it. They have to name 3 finalists. So those are going to be it. Now, should it be one of the others? I don't know. I'd like to hear you be forced to make a case for Brock Faber, just so you can see the other side of it.
Oh, easy peasy, man. Okay, so he's getting top pairing minutes. He's being put in all situations. He's being put on the ice in the last minute of play, defending a lead, or if they're down a goal or whatever. So like it was like the same with Zach Rowinski. He had a great rookie season. He was being put in all the situations that you wouldn't normally expect of a rookie defenseman. I mean, defenseman is such a high pressure, high stakes position that if you're a rookie defenseman, a lot of times it's like they bring you in slowly and then, you get better and you get better and then you get trusted with those situations. Favor has been put in all those situations from the get go. He's also 21, though. But then again, so what? Rookie defenseman, I mean, it's very, I don't want to say it's very rare, but it's pretty rare that they're 18 and they're 18 and they hit the scene and they do great, right? You get my point, right? It's different. Somebody was asking me, why isn't Pyotr Kochetkov of the Carolina Hurricanes, why isn't he in consideration for the Calder Trophy? He's like top 3 to top 5 in like all the goalie statistics, or at least he was a couple months back. I looked now, I couldn't see him on any of that. And it's like because there's also double standards. It's like if you're a forward, all you got to really do is be the leading rookie scorer. And that's good enough if you're a forward. If you're a defenseman, you have to be insanely good. Like you have to be like one of the best defensemen in the league. You can't just be the best rookie defenseman. And if you're a goaltender, you also have to have like a ridiculous season. Usually like a rookie goalie has to lead all the things and like a defenseman has to live up to a higher standard. And a forward, it's like, okay, well, you led all rookies in scoring, so that's good. That's good enough, right? So unfortunately, that's how it is, and I think that's why Bedard is going to win it, because not only did he lead all rookies in scoring, but he had a pretty sizable gap between him and then the second place rookie in scoring. And remember, he missed like 14 games with that broken jaw.
I'm not going to argue with you. I mean, that was good. I thought I put you on the spot by making you argue the other side, but you arguing the other side made it work for your own argument. So I like it.
Well, yeah, but I mean that's the thing though, is that like, and I get it, like bloggers, they got to churn out so much content, right? So they got to tell you like what Brock Faber had for breakfast, or they got to tell you like why he's going to win the Calder and it shouldn't be Connor Bedard. And I love the people who are like minus 37, that's all you need to know. I'm like, what? That Bedard was a minus player? You know who else was a minus player for a lot of his career? Alex Ovechkin. Nobody talks about that. Nobody says, oh, he's going to break Gretzky's goal record. Well, now nobody's saying that because now it doesn't look like that's going to happen. But a year ago, nobody was saying Alex Ovechkin is going to break Gretzky's goal record, but he was minus for a lot of those years that he played.
Well, it's the whole argument of whether or not plus minus is even a valid stat. And to some extent it is, because you can look at it, leads you to look at other things. But when no one on your entire roster, I think, had a positive plus minus number, that should tell you something. There's obviously a huge goal differential.
Yeah, and dude, I'll tell you this. When I played beer league hockey, I was a stay-at-home defenseman for most of my playing.
I was going to say, that's hockey speak for I don't score.
I don't score. Right. No, listen, I know my limitations. When I'm in a D league and I'm in my 40s, late 30s, early 40s, and then there are guys who are like in their 20s, they're like, you go score the goals. I'm just going to hang back and try to stop the other guys from scoring. It's hard to build a house of cards. It's easy to knock it down. And that's my philosophy on defense, right? But the thing is like all I could have was being a plus player. That was my goal. If I was on the ice and I was a +3, hey, I'm doing something right. Even if I didn't touch the puck, I was happy. If we won 5-4 and I was a -4, I felt like crap because I was on the ice for all the goals that were scored against us, even if we won, right? So yeah, it is kind of a garbage stat, but sometimes it's kind of a fun stat. But yeah, when everybody on the Blackhawks is a minus player, you can't hold that against Connor Bedard. But that seems to be the stat that the Wild fans keep clinging to is like, well, Brock Faber is a plus player and Bedard is a minus player. If you had the first pick in the draft right now, who would most GMs take?
I mean,
Bedard.
yeah, you're gonna take the offense over the defense because
Right. Because offense
yeah,
wins
you can't
games.
you can't teach offense, but you can build defense within your organization, and that's how most organizations work it. You draft defenders in the later rounds, you put them in your system, you develop them in your system so they know how to play once they get to the big club, and you go from there. I mean, look, you even made the case. The fact that Faber's 21 years old, and generally speaking, you don't get 18-year-old defensemen that blow the roof off the place. I mean, for every Bobby Orr and Aaron Ekblad and Phil Housley and Scott Stevens of the world, there's 100 more Brooks Orr picks. Not that he was a bad player. I mean, long career, great guy, stay-at-home defenseman, didn't contribute a lot on the offense, but he had a role, and that was what his role was. And defenders have those roles. Look, I'm a defenseman apologist, day in and day out. Some of my most favorite players were defensemen. I like defensemen. I think it's an underrated position. I think it's very difficult to play in that position. And the fact that this kid came out there, albeit 21-year-old kid, finishes tied for second amongst rookies in points, plays all the games, and you're right. He's out there every shift, tons of ice time. He's doing power plays, he's doing penalty kills, he's out there in the key moments of the game, and he's out there up against the top lines of opponents all the time. And that's difficult to do as a young player. So I don't take anything away from him. I mean, if Bedard wasn't there, I don't think it would. I mean, yeah, you still have two other picks, but I'd give my vote to Faber over Hughes personally. I mean, that's just me.
Clemente, do you have anything to say about Luke Hughes, the younger brother of Jack Hughes, Luke Hughes? Because I know he plays in the same division as the Rangers, so maybe you have a little more insight on him. Not to put you on the spot, but putting you on
No, I mean,
the
I
spot.
don't have a lot of insight on him in that other that he's got this sort of family lineage. But I find it interesting that the three candidates, two of them a defenseman, and Bedard is the only, center or the only attack, offensive player. Someone like a Marco Rossi would have been on my list maybe as over one of the other two players. But look, there's no doubt that Bedard will win it. And I often think if wherever the rookie points leader is, especially with that big a margin you mentioned, I don't even know why there's a debate, why there's even a vote. It's almost like it should automatically go to the person, the athlete with the most points.
Mm,
I don't know how many times that's happened because, and you say no, but because you can make the argument that if your team didn't make the playoffs, that maybe that's a big negative against you, right? That could be something that someone could argue over, not the plus minus. I don't think necessarily a thing. But Bedard got a lot of playing time, and that helped him.
So you're saying make it like the Art Ross, where whoever has the most gets it?
Yeah, I haven't gone back at the record books, but would somebody have gotten it that shouldn't have gotten it then? I don't know. I don't think so.
well, how do you win? How do you give it to a goalie then? When you have like an Ed Belfort type season or a Tom Barrasso type season or
How
a
many how many goalies get nominated for this award? How many goalies have won it? It's not that often.
I mean, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, you had a goalie on the Sharks, Nabokov won it.
Oh,
Evgeny Nabokov won
right,
the
right.
Calder Trophy, and then Mason on the Blue Jackets.
Mason had it in '09. When was Nabokov? That was like '01 maybe.
Yeah, I thought oh
Yeah,
one. I
and
think it's oh
Andrew
one.
Raycroft got it in 2004. So just in the last 25 years, there's been three.
Who won it in the '90s besides Belfort? I think one or two other goalies won
I
it
mean,
then.
Marty Brodeur won it in '94.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brodeur. Yep, I should have remembered that
Yeah.
one.
I mean, maybe there's a rookie goaltender award then. that you
So
create.
you create another award.
I mean, there's already 27 of them, but I mean, what I'm getting at is that all this debate, like the people that want Brock Faber to win it. I mean, I don't necessarily care what some blogger thinks because the blogger needs clickbait. He's gonna write the most contrarian headline out there, so you can click on it and we can talk about it. And I can make the argument that Luke Hughes should win it, and I give you like a list of reasons, and it doesn't matter. I'd be wrong.
Bedard's going to win the Calder, but you're never going to believe why he shouldn't.
Yeah, Bedard's gonna win it because he deserves it. That's the reason. But also all the stars are aligned for him. Everyone wants him to win it. It's not the reason why he's gonna win it. But if it was more razor thin, or if there was more of a debate, let's say, somebody would have had a better season in terms of points, terms of everything, it would have been interesting to see what would happen. Because then would Bedard still win it? Because people are gonna vote. And voting for awards, I don't know. It's a little bit like voting for Hall of Famers. Yeah, most of the people that deserve it get in, but there's always that one person you're like, really? This person won it? I mean, I don't even know how they get to the three finalists as opposed to there could be other players that could have been in this group. It could have been like Marco Rossi or Logan Cooley or, whoever. They could have had another, you know, it could have been five players. I don't know.
Right.
But Bedard's gonna win it. It's gonna be a big boost for the hobby. We know defenseman players generally don't do well in the hobby anyway.
If you're not
In
named Orr
terms of yeah, if you're not named
or
Bobby
Cale
or
Makar, sort of.
Kale McCarr, if you win the
Yeah.
cup, but when you're not winning the
No.
cup,
Yeah.
the price goes back down. So yeah, that helped them. Other than those two players, I can think of, it doesn't really hold.
It's funny you
So
keep saying Marco
it works
Rossi
out.
because I keep forgetting he's a rookie. I feel like he's been in the league for
Oh,
so
yeah, he's like,
long.
yeah, since 2020, but he's never played enough games to
Right.
qualify to be a rookie. So this is finally his rookie year this year, and the Wild had a great team, a lot of young players on the Wild, but we shall see. But the question you posed earlier, if you can draft somebody now, who would you draft? Everyone will say Bedard. Everybody will say Bedard. Even Wild fans would say Bedard. So
Yeah.
we have
And
we have our answer.
There's a formula for building a team, and you got to have that offensive power. And if you can get generational type offensive power, why wouldn't you? Every time somebody like this in that light becomes available, they're the talk of the town. I mean, Crosby, McDavid, Bedard,
Right.
Austin Matthews, maybe not, maybe secondary, but still, I mean, these are guys that highly touted. And were there other options available in those drafts to go with? Sure, absolutely. But if it's there, you go for it.
Yeah, the interesting thing about Luke Hughes and like Brock Faber is they played college hockey. I think a lot of players play college hockey and then they transition to the NHL and that works out. Bedard went right from juniors, right? He didn't do the whole 3 years of college, 4 years of college, whatever it is. And so I think it's a different kind of player. I mean, Brock Faber is like a 200-pound plus guy. He's huge, and that's the knock against Bedard. He's very small and he's quick, but he's very small. And I think over time he'll mature into a much bigger and better player. And I'd love to see the Blackhawks be super competitive in 3 years when they have like a bunch of players and when Bedard's playing at his fullest potential and the team is making the playoffs. I mean, if Bedard wins it, the last player to have won it, last rookie for the Blackhawks is Panarin. And say what you will about Panarin, but he's a great player, and he's the reason why the Rangers are this competitive in the playoffs. So what I'm saying is, the Rookie of the Year award is also a look forward, a look to the future. It's the promise of that player, and Bedard is totally that player. I mean, it's no doubt about it.
Well,
So,
and your point is made with them going to college too. That's the key point right there. The fact that Bedard jumped right from junior hockey to the NHL, you're getting no experience against the big boys at that point. You're playing against your own age group mostly. And these guys had the ability of playing collegiate level and, playing through at the collegiate level. So it's a big difference in preparation for the NHL, I think. I mean, let's face it, as great as Bedard is and as magical as he's pulls off these crazy goals and stuff, he puts himself in some horrible, horrible positions to get himself killed. And that's just lack of experience. He's not used to playing with giant bulldozers coming at him 100 miles an hour. So he's going to learn. He's going to have to learn quick. He already has his face broken. So it's only going to get worse from here unless he bulks up and figures it out. It's not to take away from his talent. Imagine if he could play that part of the game. Imagine if he could get in the corners and grind out and throw a couple hits on some guys. I mean, we wouldn't even be having this conversation if that was the case.
I know, like, another thing that somebody said, besides like, oh, he's a minus player, he's a minus 37 or whatever. And then somebody else was like, oh, and he got injured. And it's like, oh, and he puts himself in vulnerable situations. Like the very things you said, somebody was arguing with me on this. And I said, yeah, he's 18. He's figuring it out. But look at what he's figured out so far. And, Clemente, I'm glad you brought up Panarin, because I remember that was the year that was also Connor McDavid's rookie year. And a lot of people wanted Connor McDavid to win the Calder Trophy, but then he had that shoulder injury. He missed a lot of games. And then Panarin that year, he was the rookie point scorer. And I want to say that was the year that Patrick Kane won the Art Ross Trophy. And a big part of that was because of his play with Panarin. So it was like, okay, not only was he the rookie point scoring leader, but he elevated his line mate to win the Art Ross Trophy. And so not only was he the leading point scorer among rookies, but he elevated this superstar player to another level. And then you look at like the year that Sidney Crosby was a rookie, but who won the Rookie of the Year trophy that year?
Oh, I thought that was a rhetorical question.
Yeah, I thought you were refusing to say the answer. Like Voldemort, don't say
Well, I
his
am
name.
refusing to say the answer, but everybody knows it was Ovechkin that won.
Alex Ovechkin. And so the thing is that Ovechkin scored 50 goals as a rookie, which
Right.
is almost unheard of, right?
Yeah.
So even though they really wanted it to go to Crosby, aka Canadian Brady, as I like to call him, because look, Crosby is one of the all-time greats, but he has been shoved in our faces since day one. They made a big deal about him getting a little A on his sweater, even though he really wasn't ready for it. And then he was team captain next year. And they're like, oh, he's the youngest team captain ever, right? And like every time Sidney Crosby did something, like the NHL made it like front page news, even if it wasn't. Like even the Onion, if you remember the Onion newspaper, they had this great satire article about it. They said Sidney Crosby saves hockey with 2-assist game. And that's what it always felt like. Like Sidney Crosby gets a goal and 3 shots on net, and somehow this was something that the NHL just wanted us to know about and be happy about, right? So the NHL wanted Crosby to be Rookie of the Year. I'm sure Upper Deck did too, considering how much they pushed Crosby in all of their products in 05-06. But Ovechkin was the better player that year. He was also a year older. Ovechkin was playing against men when he was 16 or 17 years old because they do things differently in Russia. They don't coddle you. They're like, oh, okay, well, if you could play for the senior team, you're going to play on the senior team because what are you doing against juniors? We'd rather you get 10 points against guys 2 years older than you than 150 points against guys your own age, right? They really push them, right? But that's not a knock against Crosby. It was just bad timing. That's all. So it's not a knock against Faber. It's just bad timing.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't want to get into a whole thing with Ovechkin, but and I didn't even remember that because in my mind, whenever you have a player come from another country, I mean, Ovechkin was already a professional, and so the idea that like these guys come here after playing 3, 4, 5 seasons professional hockey somewhere and they're rookie in the Rookie of the Year is kind of weird, but whatever. It is what it is.
That was the knock on
He's
Kaprizov
a
too.
rookie. Right, exactly. It's like it's funny because in Major League Soccer, they got rid of the Rookie of the Year award and they call it Newcomer of the Year because they realize Newcomer of the Year can mean, oh yeah, it could be your first year here, but you've played 10 years somewhere else or 5 years somewhere else, like in Europe or whatever. And then there's this guy came out of college, but whatever, that's a different story. Luckily, we don't have that issue with Bedard.
Heck, you remember when Sergei Makarov won the Rookie of the Year? He was like 78 years old.
He was 29, but yes.
Yeah, and that would never happen today. I don't think that would happen today, but
Well, it can't. You got to be 26 or younger. That's the rules.
and even 26 is old, but whatever. I mean, no
Eh,
one's drafting a 26-year-old. I mean, now the beauty is that the world is so much smaller that if you're a great player in the Czech Republic or in Russia, some NHL team will gobble you up by the age of 21
Yeah,
anyway.
you get seen a lot easier than you used.
Yeah. Back then, the Berlin Wall had collapsed, had fallen, and all these guys were coming over, and that was a different world. But
yeah, they didn't know
yeah,
how to quite figure it out yet.
yeah, exactly. And so they did eventually, and here we are. And the NBA is the same way. The NBA drafts very young players from Europe all the time, and like Wembanyama and all that. So anyway, but look, Bedard's going to win this thing, and as you mentioned earlier, his cards I think are in a cooling part now. And so, if anyone's going to get a Bedard Young Guns, it would be probably now, because when this award is given, I think there'll be a bump, and then these grading numbers will go up. All the people that dip in, that who dipped out, they're going to dip back in, and then look. Thankfully, Bedard's a rookie only for 1 year.
I was just going to say, good thing he can only win this once.
Yeah, exactly. And so that'll be that, and then whatever second-year cards will be worth whatever they're worth, $5.
Then next year he's going to win the Art Ross, and then everybody's going to lose their minds.
Well, look, the Hawks are going to rebuild. They're in a rebuilding mode, and once they rebuild, I give them 3 years, and they're competitive. Then we'll see what happens.
Any last thoughts before I wrap it up? Because this one's gotten long in the tooth, like a triple overtime game.
When was the last one of those we had?
I don't know. I think as we go later on in the playoffs, we'll start getting those as these teams become a little more evenly matched.
That's probably true.
All right, then. Thank you for listening to the Puck Junk Hockey Podcast. As always, if you've enjoyed the show, please be sure to like and subscribe. Please be sure to tell your friends, your family, your coworkers, your pastor, your minister, wherever you pray, anybody that you know that likes hockey, that'll listen to you for 10 seconds and say, yeah, the Puck Junk Podcast, you got to check this out. If you'd like to support this podcast, you could do so by buying a shirt at shop.puckjunk.com. And until next time, collect what you like.
For more hockey goodness, follow us on Twitter @PuckJunk.